So I was born with a very genetic condition called Memerty syndrome. As far as I'm aware, there's only one other person in South Africa, which is where I'm from. When I'm dreaming, I don't dream that I'm a little person. You kind of need to do the work first, create the picture, and then they click, okay.
About showing how much value the disabled person can bring to the organisation. As soon as you start pointing to someone and showing them dollar signs, they'll go, oh, okay, I get it now.
I was born into a performing family. My whole family are performers. My family and I toured across South Africa. We did shows during school holidays. I think you either get picked on or you get isolated. I want to be more than just a quote-unquote gimmick. I hate the word midget.
Today's guest, Oscar von Memerty, is a content creator and public speaker who just so happens to also be all the way from South Africa. It was a great episode today, particularly surrounding some of the differences between here in the UK and over in South Africa when it comes to disability. Just a heads up, guys, there are some triggering words towards the end of the episode, so just be wary of those. But please sit back, relax and enjoy. Welcome to the Not Quite Podcast. I'm Charlie Randall. Let's get ready to rewrite the rulebook. And welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Oscar with us. Oscar, do you just want to quickly let the people know who you are, what you do, and a bit about yourself?
Hey everyone, thank you Charlie for having me on board. It's really exciting to chat to other advocates. But yeah, my name is Oscar von Memerty. I'm 27 years old. I am a content creator for courses. I specialize in new venture creation. I also do a bit of hip-hop dancing and motivational speaking as a sort of side hustle, as we all need a bit of side hustles. And I'm an absolute dog lover. I love my baby. You might see her in the background sometimes. But yeah, I love animals. So yeah, it's pretty much me in a nutshell, amongst other things.
Perfect. If you don't mind me asking, do you mind going into detail a little bit more about your condition and your disability and sort of how it affects you and what some of the challenges are that you face on a day-to-day basis?
100%. Okay. So I was born with a very genetic condition called Memerty syndrome. I like to joke with people saying that it's genetic, meaning they can't catch it. I was born with it. But yeah, no, I was born with this condition. It's as far as I'm aware, there's only one other person in South Africa, which is where I'm from, who has the condition. In terms of worldwide, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it is a fatal condition without treatment. Basically, my body when I was born didn't produce a particular enzyme, and enzymes are what we use to um, eat up all the fatty acid that our cells produce. And because of that lack of enzyme, what ends up happening is it starts collecting in our joints and muscles, which means that over time that we start losing ability to walk, see, hear, and eventually face death at a very young age, which can be anywhere from 12 to 13 years old. And the sad part is the brain is completely unaffected, so we are aware of what's happening as time is going on. Luckily, it's not all doom and gloom though. There is a treatment called a bone marrow transplant. And I've been through 2 bone marrow transplants. The first one was when I was 2, which my body unfortunately rejected, which is a possibility with most bone marrow transplants. And the second one was when I was 6 years old, which was thankfully a success, which means that I now have a normal life expectancy, which is really cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
I should think so. And then and then amongst other things, besides that, one of the main sort of symptoms as well is I'm short statured. So imagine the height of an 8-year-old. I'm about that size. So in terms of everyday life, day-to-day challenges, I think like I'm sure you can agree, Charlie, we sort of adapt. our routines are
Yeah.
very standard. So it's in our day to day, it's pretty, I think for me in particular, it's pretty easy because I've changed my environment to suit me. But if
Yeah.
it's not in an environment that's familiar to me, of course, height is an issue. But I'm very comfortable of asking others for help. Um, of course, another challenge is the social maybe prejudices, being, whether I'm fully capable of thinking for myself, whatever.
Yeah.
But I really go out of my way to make sure, I look good, I speak well, and that often just helps, people understand that I am capable. I'm just a little bit shorter. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's pretty much my condition, in a nutshell.
It sounds pretty intense, but I suppose that it's like anything. You get to a point where it just becomes normal for you.
Of course, the thing is, I don't know any better. I mean, this is my
Yeah.
world, and I think my family's always been. It's funny enough. Like when I think of myself, often I forget that I am short. To give you an idea, often when I'm dreaming, I don't dream that I'm a little person. I'm often a normal sized person in my head, and it's only once I go
Yeah.
out and having to interact with people who are outside of my sort of social norm. Um, I think that's one thing that I've learned is that often it takes time for people to adjust to the idea and to stop seeing the disability, and that's often why I think I'm so much more comfortable, or I think for a lot of people with disabilities, are comfortable with people that they know because they don't feel like that person is seeing the disability; they're seeing the person.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is in itself something that I've learned in terms of course, some people may be judgmental, but often it just takes time. And so as difficult as it is, I think it taught me to be patient as well.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does teach you to be patient, and it teaches you to be more understanding of people's
Of course.
situations, and that, like, because I take a very happy-go-lucky way of viewing my disability and educating people
Yeah,
about it, in terms of you only know what you know. So there's no
yeah,
point in me getting aggressive towards someone for not knowing something about a disability,
of
when
course.
I might in fact be the first person they've met with a disability, and
Exactly.
so therefore they've got a million questions that they want to ask all at once, and it just
Yes.
so happens that I'm the one that is going to get all the questions.
Yeah. 100%. No, 100%. So yeah, I think definitely, as you said, it's just understanding that, and I think sometimes we can feel that because we're so outside it or whatever, it can feel like maybe everyone's sort of victimizing us or judgmenting. Of course, some people are going to, they are the nasty people out there, but I think the
Yeah.
majority of people, they do have a sort of curiosity, and I think helping others understand that curiosity, I think, is important. Because then once that sort of curiosity is fulfilled, then you can get to like nice stuff, which is connecting with a person
Yeah.
on a person to person basis.
And what I love as well about the curiosity is sometimes people's curiosity can make you realize something you didn't even know yourself. Like,
Yeah,
there are certain questions, like, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are certain questions I've been asked in the past, and I'm like, oh, that's a new one. I've not heard that one before. Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes. And do you have any like sort of set question that most people are going to ask you?
Yeah, the killer question is, can I have sex? Is their main one normally.
Oh,
That's normally
really?
their go. Yeah, that's normally their go-to. Oh, normally the worst thing with it is the fact that everyone goes straight there. It's never, hi, my
Oh,
name's
really?
my name's Oscar. Yeah, my name's Oscar. How are you? Tell me a bit about your disability. It's actually like, right. So I've established you've got a disability. So
Yes,
therefore, I am going to ask you this question.
really. That's fascinating
Yeah,
because I think in South Africa we're a lot more conservative. So I've never had people. If anything, I think is one of my frustrations is that people don't ask that question because
yeah.
it's like people just assume, or they're too afraid to ask. But it's interesting that for you, that's like one of the first questions that you get.
Yeah, I think as well, obviously, because I'm very public with my girlfriend and everything else.
Oh,
We
yes,
honestly we get asked all the time, and it's like,
yes,
oh, can you do this? Can he have kids? Can he does it? It's
yeah,
like you said earlier, is his disability contagious? And it's like, no, no, it's not.
yes. But yeah, I find it fascinating because it's not a question that I don't think I've ever had that question. Can I have sex? Yeah, I think maybe if I was with a partner, I would give people that permission, or I don't even know. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, my top questions are: where do I get my clothes? Um, can I
Yep.
drive? And funny enough, with a lot of kids, they ask me, can I fight? Like I'm so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so so yeah, it's weird.
I always come back to there's a story that my mum always tells me of my sister when she was little, and she was at a bank and she was only I must have been about 3 or 4 and met someone that was short stature,
Yes,
and Frankie's young brain automatically assumed that because she was short in stature that she was a kid, and Frankie responded with that of "Do you want to play?"
yes.
And I'm like, whenever I hear that story, it just makes my skin crawl. Oh,
Yeah, no, but it's very sweet. I think a lot of kids are just, like adults. I think that the difference is kids don't have a filter. So I think adults are just
yes.
equally curious, but kids don't have the filter for their curiosity. Um,
Yeah.
and I definitely think a lot of parents can be better equipped on how to handle disability, or explaining disability to their children. I think a lot of people, or a lot of parents, shy away from the concept or the idea because they're uncomfortable with it themselves, um, which,
Yeah.
is not great for like everybody. It's not great for us, it's not great for the kid, and it's not great for the parents. So I think equipping the parents with sort of knowledge, and also, like you said, giving them that sort of happy-go-lucky permission to ask questions, I think is
Yeah.
important for opening up those dialogue boxes between everyone.
I think as well, it's almost the kids are better at it than the adults are because the kids, as you say, the kids have no filter, so they'll just come out and say what they want to say.
Yes.
Whereas you can constantly see with adults,
Yeah.
there's that filter that is going through of can I say this?
Yeah.
Can I not say this?
Yeah.
I don't know what I can do and what I can't do. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I try and get away from with all of my platforms is this whole oh, you can't say this word, but you can say this word. Let's
Yeah.
focus on the wording
Yeah.
after we've explained the facts.
Yeah.
Then we can trail back
Yeah.
and sort out the wording. I think the wording is the biggest sticking point for us. I think.
Exactly. No, exactly. And yeah, I mean, in South Africa, we don't have a lot of disability sort of progressive thinking in terms of wording and that sort of thing. I think the UK is quite far ahead compared to us. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a conversation that that needs to be had, and I think whether you're in the UK, South Africa, US, any sort of form of conversation, like you said, talking about different words, and actually understanding it and sort of removing that fear, will be important for
yeah,
everyone. I also believe, that constant exposure in terms of disability in the media and advertising space is important as well. Um, and portraying people
yeah,
with disability in a variety of contexts, not just the quote unquote medical space,
yeah,
or, in
yeah, yeah,
disability medical coverage, whatever it is. Um, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I think like putting
It's like we,
hmm?
it's like we said earlier. It's like we said earlier with the whole dating thing. Everyone's amazed when they find out the disabled person dates
Yes,
and has girlfriends, has boyfriends. They're amazed by it, and I'm like, that's because we're normal humans. Guess what? We don't just live in hospitals,
no,
unfortunately.
yeah, Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just like, I think that's the other thing. Like, I'll say to people, because I think often people assume for like people like us that we're in hospital half the time, whereas actually, like,
Mm,
I know in my case, I mean, I think it doesn't even take up 1/10 of my life, time that I've been in hospital.
yeah,
And then the rest is just everyday life, like going to work, um, going,
yeah,
paying
yeah, yeah,
taxes, going on dates.
yeah,
All of the,
yeah,
like that majority
yeah,
of our
yeah.
lives.
Yeah, I have a running joke in my office saying, for the disabled guy out of everyone, I am in the hospital the least amount.
Yes,
Like everyone else is like, oh, I'm going to the hospital. Like I need this afternoon off,
yes,
and then I'm sitting there like, the last time I had a day off because of going to the hospital was like 4 years ago.
exactly. No, exactly. And and I think that's part of why, like we are saying, we need to put those different portrayals in other spaces. I don't know if you ever watched
Yeah.
the one Netflix series called "Dating on the Spectrum," I think, or something on that line. And it's
No, I haven't watched that.
yeah. Let me see if yeah. Let me get the name for you quickly. But it's a fantastic series, Australian series about people with autism and how they date and navigate that world. Um, and
Oh wow.
I just love it because also they portray people with autism in such a humane, real way. Because often I think a lot of reality TV can take a bit of a freak factor angle.
Yeah.
Um, where it was there was none of that, and it was just so cool to see how they portrayed disability, particularly autism, in that case. Um, and I mean, what was great was I was watching it with my family, and they were all saying we can all relate to these people. It's the awkward
Yeah.
silences, the this, the that, the not knowing, the ups and downs,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
highs, the lows, and I just loved that kind of portrayal, and I think we need more of those kind of that kind of content, which I think would be amazing.
I completely agree. I think the more we can get us into the mainstream media, the better position we're going to be in. And like you said, I think coming back to, I just wanted to touch on the point we made earlier of going into hospital. Obviously, the other thing for those of you that aren't from the disability space to bear in mind with that statement is those there are people with chronic illness that have that issue of constantly going into hospital. So I just wanted to quickly come back and say, I'm not saying all disabled people
Yes,
don't go to hospitals.
yes,
What I'm saying is get away from the narrative that all we care about is hospital. And
of course,
actually, as we say, we want to be portrayed in mainstream media and want to be shown to be living quote unquote normal lives of dating, going out for dinner, is going on holidays,
yes,
working,
yes.
just living a general normal life.
Of course, and it just and also like just having a person with a disability just be part of the bigger picture. You're not there because they are the inspiration porn or whatever it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like my mom actually worked in the UK 2 years ago. She was doing care work, um, and she said what was
Mm,
incredible. She saw an advert for Google, and there was a picture of a family, and it was a mom, a dad, and then a child who just so happened to have Down syndrome. And I think what was
yeah.
fantastic about that kind of content was that child wasn't there because of his condition. He was just there because he was part of the family, and he just so happened to have Down syndrome. Um, and I think that kind of advertising is really powerful because then, when people do see us in public, it's not such a big thing because they would have
Yeah.
seen us how many times on the billboard or how many
Yeah,
times on an ad.
and I have to say as well, the UK is slowly getting better at that. Using obviously those who follow me on Instagram know I've worked with agencies and
Yeah,
stuff to promote disability marketing. But so we are progressing in the right direction. But as I say, I think it's more of a work like
of
like
course.
we've said, it needs to be more of a worldwide. worldwide thing to tackle. Of we're not saying, oh no, the UK have got to advertise it, the US have got to.
Of
We're saying
course.
everyone's got to do it.
Exactly. And it's like and funny enough, even myself, I was completely oblivious to it. And then only once I started doing research, I was like, hang on, where do you see people like myself? And particularly in South Africa, I started doing research, and it's almost non-existent here, or I'm just not aware of it here. And then
Yeah.
only once I started doing research did I discover, your account, which was incredible to, see your content and, how you tackle or, portray and talk about disability. I came across the Purple Goat Agency, and that was incredible to see that their content. Um, Funny enough, I followed what's her name, Vanessa, who who unhidden
Oh, Victoria.
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 Yes, yes,
Yeah, Victoria.
yes. So unhidden, I follow their content as well. And it's just it's so inspiring, and I just keep thinking this is what I would love to bring to South Africa. Um, because I just it's so cool how progressive um that kind of content is, and so refreshing.
It's quite nice to hear, because oftentimes as a British creator, and as obviously we do, there's a lot of similarities between us and the US. It's quite interesting because we often feel that we're not progressing enough,
Yes,
and then you'll speak to someone like yourself and you're sat there like, oh no, like you guys are doing great, it's us
yes.
that needs to catch up.
Yeah, no,
and
like
and that's the thing.
yo, no, you guys, I mean, to give you an idea, like, if I want to be a part of something, it's often it will be in that box of I either have to be the funny sort of gimmick or the
Yeah.
inspiration porn guy. It sounds a bit long. um, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much where we're at currently. I mean, maybe I need to do a bit more digging. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's most of the content that I found which resonates with me is from content creators from the US and the UK. Definitely, 100%.
That's amazing. Do you think South Africa, obviously, if say for example you could get a group of like 20 content creators or 100 content creators
Yeah,
and go to like some of the governing bodies and say, look, we want to do this,
yeah.
do you reckon they'd be open to the idea?
Unfortunately, our governing body is a bit of a mess. So if we wanted to do something, it would have to be 100% independent. Um,
Okay.
it's not something that I don't believe would be heard well, or it probably wouldn't be taken seriously enough. So that's part of
Yeah.
why, like at the moment, I'm really working on at myself. I'm currently, gaining a whole lot of knowledge and resources. I want to upgrade my equipment to start producing my own content, and I think it would have if we did anything, it would have to be independent. It would have to be collaboration with other independent artists. It would have to be collaboration with other, I don't know, modeling agency, advertising agencies. Um, because unfortunately, with like prejudices, it's a very long, slow turning of the ship, because
Yeah, yeah.
people will say yes, 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 I understand what you mean, but they don't really click. And it's
Yeah.
only like after constant exposure, even with my family, they're incredible, but in the beginning I was that sort of hype activist going, we need more exposure, and my parents were going, yeah, we understand. But it's only once I started showing him like love on the spectrum, um, and only once my mom went to the UK and saw the advertising there, that she's like, "Oh, I get what you mean now." You know,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting because I asked that it was a bit of a pointed question, because I knew that South Africa wouldn't necessarily be open to it as a governing body. It was just interesting to see your perspective and say that you think? Do you so if you got a load of independent content creators, do you reckon then you can't possibly start making the shift to being more of a progressive community?
I think so. I think so. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think with our government, we're not we're not particularly well known for getting. Oh, our government not well known for getting things done. So
Really?
yeah. So I think we definitely independent would be the way to go. Um,
Mm,
and then I think often, and then I think that's the other thing, you need to often help paint a picture for people for them to
yeah,
understand. So you kind of need to do the work first, create the picture, and then they click. Okay, where did you just say word?
yeah,
They have no reference point, um,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah,
It's true. I think, like you say, it's painting the picture. Like often times when people are talking about how to portray to companies and organisations to be more progressive with disabled content creators or just having disabled people more involved in business, it's about showing how much value the disabled person can
yes,
bring to the organisation. Because as soon as you start pointing to someone and showing them dollar signs,
yes,
they'll go, "Oh, okay, I get it now."
yes,
Um,
yes. No, 100%. Yeah,
and,
no, and I mean, and it's fascinating because I mean, I think like the disability community is a $1.2 billion industry. It's massive. If especially if you
yeah,
include the person who has a disability, and then C or B rather the surrounding family members and friends. Um, and
yeah,
so, I mean, it's even something that I've been pushing myself with my motivational speaking when I speak to companies. And I show that, when you have inclusive design with like disability, working from disability backwards, it actually ends up benefiting everyone.
yeah.
So like small things like making sure your website's accessible. Um, if you include alt text in terms of your imagery, not only does it help the person who may be visually impaired, but it helps your website because it helps Google know where to rank you as a website.
Yeah,
You know, um,
yeah,
so
yeah. I
yeah,
completely agree.
so that's like you're saying, it was such a big community, also very capable community, who like anyone else got our own businesses, our own um, you know whatever we're doing to make an income, and we want to be a part of the economy just as anyone else. um,
Yeah,
so yeah, so
completely,
definitely.
completely agree. And also, the the more disabled people are involved in businesses, the more as well, the more money. So it's a horrible thing to point out, but the more money we make,
Yeah,
the more money that we spend, the
yeah,
more money that goes into the
of
economy,
course.
and the whole thing gets better.
Yeah, no, of course, no, 100%. And when you point it out to companies, they really mind blown because yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
and also just pointing out those small factors. I mean, to give you an idea, I did an online talk, and one of the ladies who was watching, because I was talking about disability inclusion in advertising, and she said, like she said, oh my word,
Mm.
it's never clicked because I've got a child with cerebral palsy, but I've never thought, how would she like to be represented for the company that I work for? Um, you know, so,
Yeah.
and it's just again having those different reference points, which is, I think, what's incredible about the internet is someone like myself can go out there. Obviously, you have to do quite a bit of research, um, but
Yeah.
once you find those gold nuggets and it just starts coming in, you're just like, wow, and those reference points are
Yeah. Yeah.
so important.
Do you you touched on it earlier? So what got you into public speaking and motivational speaking? What got you into that world?
Um, Funny enough, I think any youngster, you sort of try and see what box do you fit in, and funny enough, as growing up, all I saw for a person like me was becoming, public speaker. Um, And since doing it, I mean, I'm naturally good at it, luckily. But since doing it, I realized I can do so much more than just a stereotypical public speaking role. Um, and so, I've funny enough, I was born into a performing family. My whole family are performers. So
Wow.
my dad is a singer, dancer, director, comedian. My mom's a dancer. My sister's a singer, dancer, actress. I'm a dancer, and I do a little bit of
Wow.
comedy. And so being on stage was something that I've always done since I was 13. My family and I toured across South Africa. We did shows during school holidays. um, so we would go to like
Wow, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, we would go to Cape Town, perform there for three weeks, and all the money that we made from those shows, we then saved up for a tour across Europe for holiday. Um, so
Wow, that's
so I
amazing.
mean, performing was always something that I did. And then when I was about 16, I had a school um, reach out to me and say, "Do you do public speaking?" And that's when I sort of made the plunge into the public speaking world. And then from there, I just sort of grew it and been doing a couple of gigs here and there. Not as many as I would like to currently, um, but yeah, definitely that's sort of how I got into it. So now I've been doing it 9 years. Um, yeah,
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah.
That is crazy. And I'm gonna ask because your story sounds like it's gonna be amazing. So what was it like growing up for you? Because I have a feeling this is gonna be a very interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, it's of course, beginning of my life was not typical. I mean, I was in hospital, you know, going through chemotherapy and radiation and all of that. So that was like one sort of chunk of obstacles which my family now was sort of battling. Um, and then sort of when I was 5, 6, that's when I had the second bone marrow transplant. So again, that was another sort of chunk of battling, medical problems and procedures. Um, and then in terms of growing up, I then obviously went to a normal, quote unquote, normal school, whatever normal is. um, and yeah, I mean, to be honest, people ask, did I get picked on? And like, not really. Um, I think like obviously the worst time was sort of grade 1, and that's where kids have no filter. But it
Yeah.
really wasn't. I wouldn't say like detrimental. And then, but then I think what ended up happening was the flip side of the coin, where I think you either get picked on or you get isolated. And
Yeah.
it's sort of it's not it's like which one's like the worst of the two sort of thing. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it's particularly difficult if you're not like a naturally social person. Um, then the isolation becomes that much more. And yeah, so I mean, growing up, obviously had one or two friends, not many. Um, and then when I was 11, 12, that's when I discovered I could do hip hop dancing. Um, and then that's when I was like really working at it, and I was watching High School Musical because I was sort of so cool. Um,
Love it. I love it.
there I was like in my bedroom with my lamp and the five cats watching me, and I was jamming to the High School Musical. Um, but I think like what really got me into it was it was at the time where So You Think You Can Dance came out.
Yeah.
And I saw the hip hop dancers there, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool! Like, I want to try that." Um, and so yeah, so I mean, like I rehearsed, practiced for a couple of months, and then we had to do like a sort of speech in class for like our speaking skills. And I included my dance number in it. I wasn't particularly good then, but it was impressive for what I could do at that age. Um, And yeah, and then from there they started a school talent show, and I obviously performed in the talent show, and I got a great response. Um, so yeah, I think dancing was a great way for me to bridge the gap, um, between me and other people, to
Mm.
show that I do have something valuable and interesting, and impressive to offer, and that sort of helped me bridge that gap. Um, but I think what was the one hard learning curve for me was that couldn't be my only thing that I relied on. And I realized,
Mm.
it's a great sort of door opener, but then you really then got to have to work hard still to make an effort to chat to people, make an effort to find out more about them. Um, so yeah, and that was something that I had to. It was hard for me because, compared to an audience reaction, which is explosive, and dopamine rushing kind of feeling. A normal
Yeah.
conversation can be quite bland. um,
Yeah, yeah,
and that was something that I had to sort of learn. That my dancing is not the only thing that I can rely on. I need to work on every other skill, as anyone else has to. Um, so yeah, so that was something that I really had to learn, and then I then obviously performed with my family for 3-4 years. And that was, touring and performing and all of that, which was fantastic. Um, and then I got offered a job at a marketing company when I was 17. Um, and, they said, come, after school, come work for us and, all of these things. And I chatted to my dad about it, and he said to me, why wait? Why not just go now? Um, and so the deal was I could do the job as long as I finished my schooling. um, so I moved from the small coastal town where I was based originally, and I moved to Johannesburg and Gauteng, which is quite a distance away. And then from there,
yeah.
I was working and doing my schooling. And then I was also doing the public speaking. Then when I was about 20, I got offered a job on a prank show, pranking people. Um,
Ah,
and I did that for 2-3 years, and that was a whole lot of fun. I was also young. I was getting recognized as a sort of quote unquote famous person, which is was nice. Um, but then I realized I didn't I wanted to be more than just a prankster. I wanted to be more than just a quote unquote gimmick, which is what I was painting myself in. I was
yeah.
doing it all myself. I was doing this, and I think, but no, like I want to be able to show people that little people are more than just a gimmick. We are we can be smart, intelligent trailblazers. And then that's when I just
Yeah.
decided to stop the prank show, and from there I just been sort of working on other skills. Um, so yeah, so yeah,
That's quite a journey. Like that's yeah, quite a journey. Like you have, it's very much. You can see that you've just experienced loads of different things. So
yes,
like, there's quite a big journey. Like most people follow a bit of a trend. So like, if you start in finance, you tend to follow
yes,
suit and go into finance. But it seems like you've tried so many different things, but you've learned so much from it, and that's
yes,
really cool to see. Because I think a lot of the time, as a disabled individual, we feel like there are barriers put up against us, so we don't have a choice to be picky. Like, we don't have a choice to be picky or adventurous. We
yes,
don't have, if we find a job, we basically have to stay in that job because we don't know when we're going to be able to get our next
of
job.
course,
So,
yes,
like, it's that whole thing of, you don't know whether, oh, I want to go and do public speaking, but am I going to be chosen for it, or am I going to be labeled as the stupid disabled person?
yes,
And
yes,
it's that so that's really cool to see that you've just gone, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And yeah, it seems like I just can't wrap my head around the idea that you're what 16, 15, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna go touring with my family around South Africa doing performances.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it was great because I mean, my dad's a real, professional. So watching him was incredible. We've learned so many skills. From arriving to setting up to the lighting to the direction to the music to the mics. We learned so much about show business, and I always be so thankful for my parents to say, instead of you lazing in at home, let's all go to Cape Town and perform for 3 weeks. you know. Um. So yeah,
I just
eh?
I just love that idea. I just love that idea of literally your parents being like, right, stop being lazy, and we're gonna go perform, and we're gonna go and try and earn some money.
yes,
I just love
yes,
that idea.
yes, yeah, I know, and it was fantastic. I mean, we saved up, and we did a 6 week tour through Europe, and it was so great because my sister and I knew we earned it. We worked for 4 years during our school holidays, and this is what we get. Um,
That's amazing.
so yeah, and we did London, Paris, Provence, Tuscany, Rome, Athens, and we got to experience it all. And I think that's also something that I've really taken from my parents or learned from them is to have curiosity in everything. If
Yeah,
you can be curious, you can learn so much and have such a wide reference pool. And that is, I think curiosity is really a good skill to have. Um, yeah, it just can open your world up so much in so many ways just by saying, well, screw what people think or say or what the standard is, or not even,
yeah,
not even what people say. It's just not the norm. You just don't see it. Well, let me be the one to
yeah.
show people it. Um, so yeah.
I completely agree. And like similarly, I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before. So like both my parents come from a self-employed background. They both run their own businesses,
Yeah,
but so that led to me having quite a fortunate childhood and experiencing different things and traveling to different
of course.
places.
Yeah,
And like you say, it just opens your eyes to what's actually possible
yeah,
and like what there are like when I was a kid, yes, okay, places weren't perfectly accessible and things like that, and I had to adapt, but it just showed you what's possible. In fact, like I was going to say to you, I actually, when I was about 9 years old, I traveled over to South Africa,
oh,
spent
really?
uh, yeah, I spent a couple of days in Joburg
Oh,
and
cool.
then spent a week in Cape Town.
Yes,
But that was being a traditional tourist, though. It was very much going on safaris and going to Penguin Beach and
yes,
stuff
yes,
like that. So it wasn't traditional South Africa.
yes.
Although one of my favourite foods, and I'm hoping I remember the name right. One of my favourite foods I tried out there was bobotti.
A what?
Bobotti,
Oh, baboti. Yes, it's a
yeah.
baboti. It's an Afrikaans dish.
Yeah, it was one of my favourite things I tried because I remember looking at it going, "Is that banana on a savoury
no,
dish?"
no, it's a minced dish with
Yeah,
like a sort of curry, a bit of a curry. Obviously depends. Very different Afrikaans families make it differently. Um, I know
yeah,
some of them add raisins in the rice. Um,
yeah,
but it's so cool. Papoti.
yeah. It was one of my favourite things to try out there. I don't know. It just
Really?
sticks in my memory. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So there you go.
I
I mean,
I should.
those who don't know me, one of my main reasons for traveling is always food. Like,
Of
all I
course.
care about is food. I don't
Yeah.
care. I don't care about seeing the sun. I care about what food can we eat.
I can agree with you there 100%. Like, I must actually find a Baboti recipe and I'll send it to you. You can make your own one if you want.
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah. Yes,
Yes.
please.
um,
But coming back to your point, like yeah, so it does just show you what's possible, and I think that's why I don't know about yourself, but that's the reason I started social media was to show,
yeah,
look, I've done X, Y, Z, and it isn't to be like, "Oh, look at me, I'm so impressive." It's to sort of show one the parents that what's possible with disabled people,
Yeah.
and then also show young people like you don't have to limit yourself. Anything
No.
is possible. Yes, it's more challenging, and yes, you're going to come up against probably more roadblocks than other individuals,
Of course.
but it's definitely possible, and I think it's just about adapting. That's one of
Yes.
my biggest things. Like, so many people comment on my stuff, say, "Oh, I never thought about doing things this way," and I'm like,
Yes.
it's just literally a case of trial and error, and I think
Yes.
that's something that I'd want to get over to the younger generation of try it. You never know what you're gonna get out of it.
Of course, and I think again, like that's also such a valuable skill that I think a lot of disabled people have, which is adaptation. Um, and funny enough, it's like one
Yes.
of the things that I sort of push when I do my speeches that I say to these companies, do not underestimate how adaptive disabled people are. When you like when small things like when you take for granted, like in my case, going to the fridge and grabbing a milk. You do step 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I have to do step 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, and 5. And those steps and that
Yeah.
sort of adaptation mindset can be applied to business. And getting disabled
Yeah.
people in and having them consult. You might come up against a certain challenge, and then a disabled person may have a different perspective because that's how they've had to live their whole life. Um, and
Yeah.
adaptation is also, like you're saying, is such an important skill. Um, and also just if it doesn't work the first time, try a second time, and if the second time doesn't work, then try a different way the first time. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's what's so great about your content is that you're showing people that just because maybe the first time it won't work doesn't mean it won't work at all. It just means you have to look in a different way,
Yeah.
think in a different way, and then you find what works for you and what might actually work for others as well.
Completely agree. And to give people an insight into what my brain goes through when I'm dealing with a certain challenge of how to do certain tasks,
Yes.
I have no word of a lie. I've woken up at 11 o'clock at night with a light bulb idea and gone, "Oh, I figured it out. I know how I'm going to do it." And I'm laying there like, and you've got my girlfriend next to me going like, "Why the hell are you awake?"
Yes.
And I'm like,
That's so cool, It's so cool. Like you just got a bing, like amazing, amazing.
yeah. It's really frustrating though when you're trying to sleep and your brain's going, "Well,
Uh,
what if we did it this way? Or,
yes,
or what if we try this?" And it's like,
yes,
"No, go away. I want to sleep."
yes. But the satisfaction when you do crack it and go, you have that sort of aha.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so satisfying. And when it
Yeah.
all come together, you're just like, ah, it's just amazing.
Yes. I completely, and also like if you feel, I don't know about you, but I always feel like really unstoppable
Yes,
when I figured it out. I'm like,
yes,
right.
yes, yes. No, it's really like it's such a cool skill to have. Um, yeah, just being able to
Definitely.
adapt. I think that's also what's so cool about it is no one else will do it. Like you have to come up with it
Yeah.
yourself. It's not something you can Google online or quick tutorial on
Yeah.
YouTube. You have to create whatever
Yeah.
adaptation you're doing, and when you do, you're like, wow, like that came from me, and my efforts. Yes, yes. No, exactly. And then you go like, and then that's the thing. Then you go like, but that's something that should be Googleable, like Googleable, whatever. That's the word. But I mean, like there, like you can like there you like, okay, well, there's an opportunity. There's a gap in the market. I can't find this particular piece of information, so I can put it out there. And whoever else is trying to Google it doesn't have to Google 7 times. They can Google once and find this. Yeah, yeah. They're like, it's like, whoa, how much to give away?
So what made you dive into? I think you've touched on it earlier in the episode, but what made you dive into content creation and being on social media and sort of exposing yourself to that world?
So the content creation that I work on is not social media related. It's for the company that I work for, they got a training academy for creating new businesses, so sort of entrepreneurship kind of training. And what I do is I help create the content for those classes, which is both in person and online. Um, and what made me decide to get into it, I was just like, I was the only one around who was like, actually, I would like to do that. They sort of, my boss reached out to me and she said to me, I got the stuff that I want to put together. Would you be interested? And no one else was putting their hand up. And I thought, well, yeah, let me try. And I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I enjoy research. So research is something that I enjoy doing a lot. It's uh, Chat GPT has been my hero last month. It's like a researcher's heaven. Chat GPT. But yeah, so I do content creation for that. In terms of my own personal social media, it's something that I want to work on this year. I'm
Yeah.
looking to do like a sort of lifestyle, clothing type of social media content, which
Yeah.
I think will also be quite cool to mix with my dancing. So I'm planning on
Yeah.
doing that, which is what
Definitely.
I've been working on in the background. And then yeah, I mean, it's funny enough, content creation, uh, from the sort of more academic thing, like I said, I enjoy the research, and then content creation from a social media perspective, I enjoy it because it allowed me to be creative. Um, you know,
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that I got this experience as a performer. So I've got that sort of performer knits ideas together mindset where I hear a piece of music, I see a piece of clothing, I see a particular routine, and I think that would be great if I mashed that together. And that's
Yeah.
basically what being creative is. It's taking different reference points and then matching them together, which is, you know, I think, or I believe, is what creativity is.
I completely agree, and it's really interesting as well because a lot of people that have a creative skill or work in the creative space have very similar journeys. Like for me, personally, so in school I studied and did really well at drama. So drama was my thing, and I did really well at performing. And yeah, weirdly enough, as a side note, I was really good at like really dark pieces. So like
Really?
pieces about drug misuse. Yeah, drug misuse,
Wow.
like someone's been murdered. I was really good at that, and I don't get why because I'm so sarcastic.
Yes.
I really don't get why, but it's really interesting to see that people follow a very similar journey, and I feel like you say it helps us, helps to say people and helps creators because we look at things so differently to what
Yes.
the other people see.
Yes. Yes.
And we're very, I'd almost say like it's weird to describe a creative thinker because we're creative so we can be a bit wacky and a bit out there and a bit different,
Oh yeah.
but then also a lot of the time we're quite analytical
Oh yeah.
because we know what we want to achieve,
Yes.
and we're trying to figure out how we get there
Yeah.
is a different step.
Exactly. No. Exactly. And yeah. And I think also that's the other thing. I think what's great about being a creative is you're able to picture something completely new in your head. You don't need a reference point that exists already. And I think, if anything, that's one of
Yeah,
the hardest jobs being a creative is communicating those ideas before they actually
to
are
others.
existing. Um,
Yeah.
and trying to, like, the same thing with the painting of the picture for people with disability. It's the same concept. So even when I do presentations, I try and gather as much imagery and video references to try and help paint that picture that's in my head before it's being created. To try and communicate that idea to other people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. And I say, I feel like everyone needs a visual. Like I feel like people are very visual people
Oh
when
yeah,
it comes to learning about disability. Like oftentimes, people like yourself and me who have conditions that are obvious to
yes,
the naked eye
yes,
are often more thought about than necessarily the people with hidden
of
disabilities such as
course.
autism or chronic illness and that world, because people don't see it, so they're oblivious to it and it goes over their head.
Yeah, I mean, like anything. Also, like for example, mental health. It's such a hard thing for people to grasp, like the idea of depression and anxiety, because until you experience, you don't know 100% what that person is experiencing. It's kind of like, yeah, it's like like when people often, like, because a lot of people just don't understand depression, they'll say, oh, be happy or grateful, and it's kind of like, well, if that was so simple, why is it not working? You know? Yeah, yeah, and it just it's kind of like thinking, but if someone broke their leg, you wouldn't say to them, "Oh, just be grateful and try walk," because it's broken. It's not gonna, you know. And it's the same, and unfortunately, it's the same with, like, say, for example, depression. Depression requires intervention, whether it's therapy, medication, better lifestyle choices, um, and people, because they just can't see it. It's the same probably for people who have chronic illnesses. It must be so hard for them to try and explain to people what they're experiencing, because that person just hasn't had the experience of what they go through on a day-to-day basis.
Completely agree, and completely agree. And I think that's the problem. It's that it's to say, as you say, you've hit the nail on the head with depression and anxiety. Everyone's like, oh, just get on with it, like it's
Yes.
it's nothing major. And it's the same mentality is given to those with hidden disabilities, because it's like, as you say, no one's got a point of reference.
No.
No one's got this is what they're going through and this is the challenges that they face.
Yes.
Everyone just goes, oh, you're just tired today, like just
Yes.
get more sleep. And it's like,
Yes.
it's not that's not how that works.
Yeah. It's just, no, exactly. And it's like, if you take anything, like, for example, you know, a car crash. I've never been in a car crash before, so I can never fully understand what a person who's been in a car crash feels when they have to get in the car again. Because I haven't had the experience. It's hard for me to try and. I can sympathize to a point, but I'll never fully grasp what it feels like. And I think, like we are saying, it's so difficult for people with hidden or chronic um, disabilities, because they can't. It's like you kind of wish that you could maybe, I don't know, create a simulator and put a
Yeah,
person in that simulator and say, this is what it feels like. And only then will they go,
yeah,
I get it. I understand
yeah.
now. You know?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm conscious of time because I know you've got shedding happening shortly over
Yeah,
in South Africa. So I'm going to hit you with the last question, which is
no problem.
what what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
Oh, I hate the word midget. it's
Okay.
yeah, and that is unfortunately it's such a common word. And even my friend, like, he'll sometimes unintentionally say the word. You won't call me a midget, but you'll say, like, he saw a midget out wherever, and I go, no, dude, like,
Yeah.
that's not the correct word. Um, and
Yeah.
again, it's not that he's a tail. I mean, he's for goodness sakes, he's friends with a little person. um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but again, it's just because he hasn't been given other analogies to use. So I would say for me, little person is better. Um, Funny enough, I wish there was a better term somewhere for it, but yeah, I think little person is a better term to use. Or I know another common one is LP. Um, and funny enough, your point about, do we use the word disability or not? That was something that I was also struggling with when I first started my research. And, like, some people were saying, we should say differently abled, and other people were saying disability. Um, since my research, I think definitely I think using the word disabled would be better, especially if you paint it in a context of it's not disabling in its entirety. It's just one description of me
Yeah.
as a multitude of things. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's that debate's been really interesting. Like, which one do we use? But yeah,
I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard because I always fall on the side of the line of I hate because I experience it all the time. You'll see like I'll ask someone, "Oh, do you know where the disabled toilet is?" Oh no, that's actually a bad example. Let's go back. So they'll say like, "Oh, you're yes, I'm disabled. I'm in a wheelchair. You can say it. It's
yes,
fine.
yes,
I'm not gonna kill you."
yes, yes,
Like you can see their brain going.
yes,
What can I say? What can I? I don't want to like. I can't call him. I can't call him this. I can't call him this.
yes,
Can I call him this? I don't know.
yes,
And I'm like, look, Karen. I just need the toilet. Yes, I know. I'm in a wheelchair. Can you let me go?
No, I think exactly like it should just be like the fact that I have brown hair. No one goes, "Oh, can I say brown hair?" It's like
Yeah.
it should just be like one part of the many things that make us people.
Yeah.
The same way we say that person is tall, or that person is
Yeah.
short. We don't hesitate. But I think unfortunately because there's still so much discussion around the word disability and disability itself, a lot of people are just unsure of where they should or shouldn't. But I like your
Completely
approach.
agree.
I, I,
Completely.
I like your approach of just saying it as it is. Yes, I am a disabled man in a wheelchair, but I'm also Charlie who does drama, and I have a beautiful girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complete. Like the thing is as well, it's that horrible thing of like you can go through so many different words for it. You can go through for as differently abled
Yes,
or I've had person with a superpower before. I've had loads of really random ones, and it's like don't overcomplicate it
yes,
because I think the worst thing is by saying some differently abled.
yes,
I just think it. I don't know. There's something about it that just makes it more complicated
yes, yes. And
than
yeah,
what it is.
yeah, no, 100%.
It's like a universal. It's a universal term. I feel like it's a universal term to be identified as a disabled person. Now, some people aren't comfortable maybe identifying as a disabled person, and I can understand
Yeah,
that, especially if you don't feel that way. But as a general identifier, it's like someone said to me once. It was actually on this podcast. I had a guest called George,
yes,
and we were talking about the term that's quite commonly used here in the UK, which is an interabled relationship. So
yes,
the idea behind an interabled relationship is one person has a disability and the other person in the relationship doesn't.
of course.
And some people have an issue with that term because it makes a disability relationship different to a normal relationship,
Right.
quote unquote normal.
Yeah,
But he then said, so he was in an accident which led to him becoming a wheelchair user.
right.
And he said the problem was I had my accident. I started to look into the dating scene, but I didn't know how to find people like me that had experienced
Yes,
what I'd been through.
yes,
So I'd literally typed into Google "interabled relationship."
yes,
So without that word,
exactly.
he wouldn't know where to start.
No,
So like everyone needs something. Everyone needs a description because that's what all the words that we say are.
yes,
They're descriptions of something else.
exactly.
It's a really hard one to find a way to almost make everyone happy because I completely understand some of the argument of we shouldn't use this word, we should use this word, or we should use this word, or we
Yeah.
shouldn't say this. But are we not developing more barriers by getting caught up in the language as opposed to what actually is the issue?
No, and I think that's the thing. Unfortunately, we do live in a world where we do have to categorize ourselves. It just helps us identify and navigate, especially in the internet scenario as well. I think if anything, it's then not trying to change the category itself, but the emotions that category gives. So for so long, disability has been
Yeah.
associated with negative emotions. where I think if we just use a disability phrase and we slowly turn it into a more positive phrase, then I think maybe more people will be comfortable with labeling. I think a lot of people may not be comfortable because for them it's still a negative um, emotion that is stirred up by that word.
I completely agree, and I think it's hard. I mean, I completely took over your point of that you're not quite politically correct opinion. I realised I went on a completely different tangent, but I completely agree that it's the connotations that are with those words that are often the actual issue. But coming back to your point about the terminology used to describe your disability and identifying as a little person,
Yes.
do you do you, are there any other terms that frustrate you that you get called or identified as?
Not really. Only really the M word, and that's just because for me, that association is, little people were kept in like a quote unquote zoo or circus, and that's how the term.
Uh
There was a guy who recruited a whole bunch of little people, created a circus, and then called them midgets, and that's where the word comes from. Um,
yeah,
so I think that's
it's
probably why I don't I also associate it with sort of gimmicky reality TV shows that word is used a lot. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, in terms of other words,
yeah,
I've never had any other word. Funny enough, no one. Yeah, I can't think of any other word that has bothered me or has even been mentioned.
yeah. I was just curious to see whether there was any other, because obviously for someone who's physically in a wheelchair like me,
Yeah.
it's often like you'll get spastic, retard.
Yes.
As you say, the common misconception that you can't look after yourself, you can't
Yes.
speak, um, and so like it's. I also going to pre-warn people that I need to put a warning there because that word can be triggering for some people.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to pop that there for now. But yeah, no, it is. It's crazy the like how the like particularly with midget. I feel like that's such an old-fashioned
It is.
word.
It is.
It's like, and it's also really interesting because I've got like a friend that lives over in the US and he uses the word handicap all the time, and I'm like, in the UK, that's something my nan would say to me. So if my nan was describing me, she'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've got a handicapped grandson."
Oh,
Like
really?
it's not a word that it's not really a word that we use. It's
Uh,
more of an old fashioned
yeah.
word. So it's really interesting to see like how like I don't know how common the M word is used here,
Yeah.
but I yeah, to me it just seems like such an old fashioned.
Yes.
Oh, what can we call them? Let's call them this.
Yes. No. And it's so funny because I mean, literally, the word handicap comes from disabled people weren't able to get jobs, so they would have to hold their caps um, for begging.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yes. And that's where the word
I did not know that.
handicap
Wow,
comes from.
that's amazing. See, I love doing this podcast because I learned so much. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, it might be one of those new age myths, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, it makes sense when you put two and two together. I read it somewhere.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. It does make sense. Um, I'm also, as I say, just conscious of time, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you. I always give my guests a chance to like sort of promote themselves, promote anything that they're working on. So now's your opportunity to sort of tell the people where to find you,
Yes.
what to follow, what to expect next.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let us know.
Cool. So, guys, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Oscar Von Mems. So Oscar, V for Vivian, O for Oscar, N for nail, M for mum, E for egg, M for mum. You can find me on Instagram, and if you want to send me a
Nice.
DM, follow me. Any extra information you can find on my Instagram page.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Oscar. It's been amazing. Particularly, I've learned so much. I think it's always interesting when I have guests that are from somewhere completely different. Even when I have my guests from the US, I learn so much, and I often think like, why don't I know half of this stuff? So like, thank you so much for coming on and just telling us your journey.
And thank you for creating this podcast. I think it's amazing, and I think you're gonna really create some amazing content, which I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, that's so exciting. So thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Not Quite Podcast. Please make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram to get regular updates about the podcast.